good to see you. I think I recognize a few people that were here last week when we went to Yosemite, and that was a lot of fun. So this week we're going to go to a different park. We're looking at going to the Grand Canyon. As we've seen, it looks like 2 people have been there, and we're going to have everybody that's be there by the end of today. So without waiting any further, we'll just jump right into the fun stuff. So I'm going to share my screen to go to this awesome place in the Grand Canyon. Boom! Okay, so this is the Grand Canyon. As you can see, it is pretty big. Some even call it grand. What we're looking at right here is a spot called Navajo Point. It's a very, very popular spot of the Grand Canyon because as you can see a lot of things. If you look really closely, all the way at the center of the screen here, you can see the Colorado River. That is the river that goes through the Grand Canyon. The Grand Canyon is about 18 miles wide, and at times it can get up to a mile deep, which is crazy. The canyon is also super long too. It is 277 miles long, a really long canyon. And it's really hard to see into the canyon apart from spots like this way up high. So it's really fun to see the views from up here. But in my opinion, one of the best ways to see the Grand Canyon is to paddle in the Grand Canyon. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go on a virtual paddling trip and paddle all 277 miles of the Grand Canyon. So we're gonna jump all the way to a spot called Lee's Ferry. This is Lee's Ferry. This is mile 1 of the Grand Canyon. As you can see, there's a lot of people that are getting ready to paddle. So I'm also gonna get ready to paddle. So whenever I paddle, there's a couple of things that I have to have with me. One, it's always gonna be sunny out at pretty much any time that you paddle. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and put my sunglasses on. Another thing that I always paddle with is my PFD. That stands for Personal Flotation Device. If I get thrown out of the water, I want to make sure that I'm going to be floating and I'm going to be okay and safe. So I'm going to buckle that in. And then I also need to paddle. I'm going to do one thing real quick because this fun little background that I have right now is a little funky. Oh, looks like I might be stuck with it. That's all right. We're going to stay with it then. The last thing that I need before I paddle is my actual paddle. Do any of y'all have something that you can kind of paddle with today? It looks like somebody's got some paddles. We've got a couple of other people that have some paddles. Awesome. Well, if you have your paddle, here's what I'm going to tell you to do. We're going to learn how to paddle really quick. And then as we're paddling from location to location, y'all are going to help me move. So the way that you're going to help me paddle is you're going to grab the front or the top of your paddle. You want the blade at the other end. You're going to reach forward, and then you're going to move it back. So that's how we're going to paddle, just like that. If you have your paddle, go ahead and paddle with me real quick, just so I can make sure that we're all working together. There we go. We got a couple of people paddling with me. Nice. All right, so I will let you know when we're about to paddle. For right now, we're just going to hang out. So let me tell you a few things about Lee's Ferry, which is, again, where we're at right now. Lee's Ferry is mile 0 of the Grand Canyon. So this is how everybody puts in at the Grand Canyon to go all 277 miles. As you can tell, there's a lot of people that put in here, and there's a lot of gear. It takes a long time to paddle 277 miles, and it's the only possible crossing for that long of a time. This area was originally inhabited by Native Americans like the Navajo a long time ago. And it was settled by a guy named John Lee, who ran the service for ran a ferry here for about 55 years, and that's why this area is called Lee's Ferry. So there's a little history about it, but as you can see, it's how we hop on the river. So without any other questions, we're going to go ahead and hop on the river. So we're going to paddle to mile 13. So if you're paddling with me, let's go ahead and start paddling. And we're, boom, hopping up to mile 13. So we're looking at like what's inside the canyon now. This is 13 miles into our 277-mile trip. We're not going to stop here very long. We're going to look at some of the sites. That's where we just came from, mile 0. Pretty cool. This is what a lot of our views are going to look like the whole trip. We're going to paddle a little bit further now, jumping to mile 32. And there's some creeks that come in here. There's the river. Again, this is the Colorado River. There's a couple of people that are paddling with us. As you can see, they got a lot of stuff. All right, one more good paddle, and then we're going to talk about what's happening at mile 50. So give me some more paddles. And we are at mile 50. Oh, wrong button. There we go. We're at mile 50 here. So this is, as you can see, a nice little beach. It's a nice little flat area right here. And the reason that we're going to talk about this spot is not only do we have these big high views right here, but we have these areas that are up this hill called the granaries. We're going to zoom in a little bit so we can see some of them. Whoa, okay. So this is what we are looking at, these granaries. So I have a question for you all. I think I have to actually stop my screen share to ask you this question. Unless we can get question 3 pulled up without that. Give me 1 second. There we go. Question 3 for our poll. So we've got these holes in the wall that you just saw. So my question is, what do you think these holes in the wall are for? Are they A, homes for animals, B, food storage for Native Americans, C, strange erosion of the rock, or 4, do you think it was aliens? What do you think? Go ahead and submit your answers. We have a couple of people thinking homes, a couple of people going food storage. Few people are thinking erosion. Nobody's going for aliens right now. Interesting. Looks like we're waiting on a few people. We'll give you another minute just to pick out your answers. Okay, so we've got 8 people that have said homes for animals. We have 7 people that have said food storage for Native Americans. A couple of people thought it was the erosion. Nobody thought it was aliens. The actual answer is that it is food storage for Native Americans. So these areas right here are called granaries. They were grain storage structures built about 900 years ago. We'll zoom in a little bit closer so we can see inside of them. So they put this up high up on the cliffside, and they would store things like corn. They would store things like pumpkin seed, grains and stuff like that. And they would put them way up high so other animals and stuff couldn't get them. So as you can see, we're really high off the ground. So they would put them up here so things like deer couldn't eat them and things like that. Mice and other rodents could still get in. So a lot of times what they would do is with their corn and pumpkin seeds and other grains, they would take different types of snakes, actually put the snakes in with their food. So the snakes wouldn't eat the corn, but they'd eat things like the mice and things that would eat the corn. So this is just some areas that you can see that how the Native Americans lived and how they also used the canyon and this area. Like I said, this was built about 900 years ago. The Anasazi people, the Paiute, and the Navajo all used this area a lot in the Grand Canyon. As you can see, there's plenty of water and plenty of areas to store their food. So we are going to jump back down to the beach real quick. Boom. And we are about to go through mile 60 rapids. So these are some decent sized rapids. What I'm going to do actually here is I've got a little video to show you about what it might be like if we were actually rafting. So I'm going to click that button and we're going to play that video real quick. You can see ahead of you that white spot on the water. That's us getting close to the rapids. And here's some of them. It's a big one. A lot of river rafting is like this. You'll have some hard rapids followed by some shallow areas where there's some eddies and flat water, and then you're right back into the rapids. Whew. So as you can see, going down the Colorado, man, that was a big one. Isn't always just a nice little easy paddle. A lot of times the river can be rough. These are all class 3 to 4 rapids. You can get up to 5, and the Colorado River is one area that of the nation that has class 6 rapids. Those are very big rapids, very hard to come by. So those are pretty cool little areas. So what we're going to do is we're going to paddle along to the next really cool spot. So if you have your paddles with you, go ahead and we're going to paddle to mile 60 rapids, just like what we saw. There's some of them right there that we just saw some people coming by. And then we're also going to go one more spot, so keep on paddling for me. 2. And get to, boom, the Little Colorado Confluence. So right here, we are at mile 62. We just came from mile 60 rapids. So the Colorado River is right here. What we've been paddling on, coming this way, goes right here. But as you can see here, we have something else coming in right here. So this is the Little Colorado River. Right here, this big blue area is another river. It's a different color, and as you can see here, the bright blue water of the Little Colorado is merging with the dark water of the Colorado River. So this whole area right here is where these two rivers join. It's really interesting. The Little Colorado River that we're seeing right here is one of the largest tributaries of the Colorado River. A tributary is when another river merges into a different river. So here we have the Little Colorado River merging into the Colorado River. So a lot of people really like this space because, as you can see, it's really pretty because of the different colors. The Little Colorado gets its color from calcium carbonate at the bottom of the river that makes it seem really, really bright. The sun is kind of hits that calcium and disperses through the water, making it bright and colorful. It's really interesting. Really cool stuff. And we can look at some of the other views while we're here. Don't forget, we're in the Grand Canyon. So we've got these giant walls passing us the whole time. This area is where that Little Colorado River comes through. And then back to the Colorado as it merges along and comes through here. Pretty neat stuff. We can get a little bit better of a look at this Little Colorado River area here. So we're right on the water right now. And as you can see, you've got the bright, bright colors on our left with the dark colors of the Colorado on our right. Pretty interesting stuff. The Little Colorado is actually warmer in temperature than the Colorado. The big reason why is the Colorado is controlled by a dam, so that water has to hit the dam and go under it, where the Little Colorado is not dam controlled, so it gets a lot warmer. Pretty neat stuff. So with that being said, we've got a little bit more paddling to do. So go ahead and grab your paddles, and we're gonna try to hit up to Carbon Canyon. It's a really cool spot. So let's paddle. Going to mile 65. So we're gonna paddle there. 1, 2, man, it's hard paddling sometimes. Take a look around here. This is what we're paddling through, Colorado River, Grand Canyon. All right, give us another good paddle. 1, 2. Looks like we're taking a break right here. Peeking around, looks like the river's widened a little bit. And our next spot is actually gonna be not quite the river, but it's gonna be a slot canyon, which is pretty cool stuff. So give me 2 good paddles to get to that slot canyon. 1, 2, and we are, boom, in a slot canyon. So this is a slot canyon, as you can see from this person right here, not very wide. We can look around and see that it's really high. And it seems like it goes a good long ways, but it's not very wide. That's a characteristic of a slot canyon. They're long, narrow, and deep. This area of northern Arizona and like southern Utah, which is really close, has some of the biggest concentrations of slot canyons in the world. In fact, the longest and deepest slot canyon in the world is right by the Grand Canyon. They're really pretty. Most of the canyons that are slot canyons, for every foot wide that it is, it's at least 10 feet deep. So you can see some really, really cool stuff. Slot canyons are formed the way a lot of canyons are formed is through erosion. So you'll have wind and water that cut into this stone, and over hundreds of thousands of years will cut canyons deep into the rock, creating slot canyons. We'll talk a little bit more when we get to our next canyon about the type of rock and how the erosion is formed, because right now there's a lot of different cool geological stuff going on here, but it's even neater at the next spot. So it's pretty cool. So with that being said, we're gonna paddle to one more camp. Then we're gonna get to the spot called Blacktail Canyon. So everybody give me some paddles. Give me 1 paddle. Give me 2 paddles. And we're gonna pop into, boom, right here. This is Vishnu Creek. So we're going to look around here. We are about mile 81 of our 277-mile trip. So we're doing pretty good right now. Looking around, seeing like a nice wide river. This is a beach right here where it looks like some people are camping out, enjoying a nice flat area. And again, you don't forget, we're up in the canyon, so we're looking around and seeing all sorts of fun stuff here. All right, our next spot that we're trying to get to is a big jump. So we're gonna paddle a little bit more until we can get to Blacktail Canyon. So everybody kind of give me some paddles. 1, 2, almost to Blacktail. Let's see what we're looking at here. Couple of rapids in the water here. A little bit narrower of a canyon. And then this next one is Blacktail Canyon. Let's see what's there. 2 more good paddles. 1, 2, nice. Okay, so this is Blacktail Canyon. It's a pretty cool canyon for a lot of reasons. One, like we just talked about, it's a slot canyon. So we are deep in this canyon, not very wide, pretty deep. This is one side of it. Let's look and see what it looks like at the other side. So we can go even deeper in there. So let me pop over in there, and then we'll probably look back at that one spot that we were just at. It's a pretty long canyon, pretty deep. Lots of cool rocks to look at. Lots of interesting bands, all sorts of stuff here. So we're going to jump back to that first location right here. And I've got another poll for you. So I want y'all to guess how old you think these rocks are. Do you think that these rocks are 1,000 years old? Do you think they're 10 million years old? Or do you think they're 1.3 billion years old? Or maybe as old as the aliens? You don't know. It could be the aliens. Got a couple of people thinking they're billion, a couple of people thinking million. All right, yeah. Got a lot of people voting now. Interesting. No one thinks they're as old as the aliens yet. All right, I'll give you another couple of seconds. There's still what looks like there's 1 or 2 people that haven't voted yet. Okay, so we've got 1,000 years old. We've got 10 million. We have 1.3. The actual answer is that they are 1.3 billion years old. These are really, really old rocks. And there's actually 2 different types of rocks that are actually going on here. And we can look at them and see. So I'm going to close that poll, and we're going to kind of look around at the rocks. This is a spot that you can really tell the difference. So if you look at it, you can see how there's kind of a line right here in the rock. All of the rocks at the bottom half of your screen seem really bumpy. They look like they're going kind of up and down, and they're grayish, where the ones a little bit above them are a little bit more ready. Their lines are going left to right on them, and they're looks to be a little bit smoother. So those are actually 2 different types of rocks. The bottom section here is what is called the baseline rocks. So these are rocks that were formed because of pressure. So 1.3 billion years ago, these rocks were under the earth, and they were squeezed together really, really, really tightly. They used to be a type of metamorphic rock that when they were squeezed, they had all these bumps happen, they had all these bandings happen. You know how sometimes, like if you get like some, not pudding, oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the name, Play-Doh, that's it. I don't know why I couldn't think of Play-Doh. You know, if you get Play-Doh in your hands and you squeeze it, it kind of like squeezes between your fingers sometimes and it looks all messy and funky. that's kind of what was happening. If you look at all these like white little blotches and everything, this rock was squeezed together and then they kind of like bumped up because of the pressure. So that was basically the ground 1.3 million years ago when it was squeezed together like that. And then on top of that, you have this reddish rock, which is known as sandstone. So this used to be all underwater, and you used to have like a river and a current that would come through here. And if you've ever seen a river outside, it's not as clean as the pool, right? There's all these like little sediments and stuff, and the bottom of the river is a lot of times has like sand and stuff on it. So what would happen is as the water was moving, it would drop little bits of sand down, and over the years, that sand would pressurize and become what is known as sandstone. So that's why you have two different types of rocks here. You've got your baseline and then your sandstone. It's pretty cool. As you can see all over this canyon, you can see the difference where the baseline is, where the sandstone is. Looking at the other side, you can see it here too. Here's the baseline at the bottom, and here's the sandstone at the top. If we go a little bit deeper into the canyon, that other spot, you can even see it here. Not all the rocks are the same, right? So you can see baseline, even up here a little bit, and then there's the sandstone. Looking all around, you've got the baseline, sandstone. Baseline, sandstone. All rocks are not created equal. So there are different ages, different types of rock created. It's really, really cool. There's a whole study of it that people really like to study all about rocks. Pretty cool. With that being said, we can continue on our journey at this point. So we are going to keep on paddling. Let me get back to the river. All right, with this being said, let's paddle. We're gonna paddle through the Granite Narrows here. So everybody give me like one or two good paddles. 1, 2, and we are at the Granite Narrows here. It's a really pretty spot. As you can see, we've got some rapids that people come through. They'll shoot through these rapids. They pull up here and camp right here for a good bit. Nice little area of the canyon where the canyon wall's narrow, and you can see a lot of rocks, a lot of cool stuff. Looks like over the times people have decorated this rock to even look like a piano. That's pretty cool, huh? You can see all sorts of stuff in nature. And then we're gonna go one more good bit to Upper Deer Creek. So give me one or two more good paddles. 2, and we are at Upper Deer Creek. So this spot's pretty neat. This is about the halfway mark of the Grand Canyon. And there's lots of stuff that I want to point out right here because we can see some stuff that wasn't just rocks from 1.3 billion years ago. So what we can look at is actually we can get deep and like look really closely at rocks and see some pictures and see some stuff that are called trace fossils. So everybody, I bet, has heard of what a fossil is, but not everybody, oh, I just moved that where I couldn't see what I was trying to see. There we go. But not everybody's heard of trace fossils. So if you look at this picture right here, you can look at the wall or rock and see where there's some interesting little grooves in the rock here. So like the rocks we were looking at earlier were shaped by water. These rocks were actually shaped by animals. So millions of years ago, there's these things called trilobites. They kind of look like weird looking crabs. If you've ever seen a sand crab, that's what they kind of look like. And this right here, what you're seeing is a trace fossil of those trilobites. So millions of years ago, one of these trilobites walked across the bottom of a sandy riverbed, and that area ended up becoming fossilized because of pressure. And you can still see right here the footprints of that trilobite. It's pretty cool. There's a lot of other video or pictures that we can look at where we can see the footage of some of these trilobites. I think it's right here. So I'm going to expand this one so you can see all sorts of little evidence right here of the trilobites, and then moving up through here is another one. There's another really good picture right there. So this guy actually, this image right here could be a fossilized trilobite. So it's not a great looking one as we think of like an animal fossil or a skeleton like a big dinosaur in a museum. But this is what they kind of looked like. They had this general shape of a shell, and they would sit on that bottom and like it looks like those train track type stuff. The circle is the trilobite right there. So like this was its head right here, and then this was its back. Pretty cool stuff. Rocks tell us all sorts of things. They're kind of like a museum of time for the Earth. Yeah, it is cool. So we're going to keep moving then. We've got a little bit more paddling to do. 2 or 3 other things to look at before we get through the end of the canyon. So we're going to, if you've got your paddles with me, help me paddle. Give me 2 good paddles, and we're going to get to the mile 150 ledges. We got a good bit of paddling to do before we get to our next point of interest. So this is mile 150. Looking around, that's a big canyon wall. I like climbing. I would love to climb that. Looks a lot of fun. All right, give us another good paddle. 1, 2, and then we're way up here at mile 178 out of 277. So we got about 99 miles to go. We just came from that direction. It's really pretty through here. So we are all in the canyon right now. This whole area is the canyon. Give me another good paddle, and we're gonna keep on moving. 1, 2. We are trying right now to get to a spot called Pumpkin Springs, which is a really cool little area. It's going to be our next spot right here. Mile 213, Pumpkin Springs. Give me 2 more paddles and we'll get there. 1, 2, nice. Okay, so we are now at Pumpkin Springs. We're seeing this water here. This is the Grand Canyon that we are in. We just came from this direction. As you can see, we're pretty deep. But the thing that I want us to put at or look at is this little body of water right here. This is Pumpkin Springs. Let me see if I can show you another view of it where we can see, kind of how it gets its name. So as you can see from this picture on your right here, Pumpkin Springs is actually up above the river about 7 or so feet, and it's a little orangey. That's where it gets its name Pumpkin Springs from. So I have another polling question from you. I want y'all to guess how the water got into Pumpkin Springs. Did it A, come up from the ground? B, was it rainfall? C, was it a really big wave? Or D, did aliens put it there? Get your questions in, or get your answers in. Got a couple of people thinking it came up from the ground. A few people thinking it's rainfall. Somebody finally thought it was aliens. Finally. There's been alien guesses on all of these. No one's thought it's the aliens yet. All right, we've got about 3 more people that we're waiting on. Looks like most people think that it's rainfall. I'll tell you what it is once we get that last vote in. Give you a few more seconds to get it. We got 4 people think that it's come up from underground. We have 9 people thinking it's rainfall. We have 2 people thinking it was a big wave. We have 2 people thinking it was aliens. All right, so our biggest guess is 9 people thought that it was rainfall. Well, actually, it came up from the ground. Thank you for playing for the aliens. It makes me really happy that people guessed that. But the answer is actually it came up from the ground. So you can see how the water is a slightly different color at the top of the springs than at the bottom in the river. What happened is this water seeps up from underground. And then when it goes over a small bump, like maybe a stick or something like that, this water gets a little turmoiled. And when the water goes over the stick, what it does is it'll drop like a sediment of calcium. And over millions and millions of years, that calcium keeps building up and building up and building up. And as that water keeps getting higher and higher and higher, it builds that wall higher and higher and higher and higher. So this is how the area of Pumpkin Springs was formed. This is, if you have seen any pictures of caves, where you see stalactites and stalagmites, they are formed in a very, very similar way, where stalactites will drip from the ceiling, drop some water, and when they drop the water, the calcium stays up, where stalagmites come up from the ground, and as the water seeps down, it'll leave the segments of calcium at the top. So it's the same way that caves are formed, but it's a little different in this case because it's this beautiful looking spring in the canyon. Pretty cool stuff to look at. Pumpkin Springs is a really neat place. A lot of people do a lot of studies there. If I was there, I'd probably jump off of it into the river because it looks really fun and to float down there. I have my PFD on, like I said, so it's probably safe. Pretty cool stuff with Pumpkin Springs. So we have kind of another spot that I want to get to called Travertine Canyon. So everybody give me 2 or 3 paddles to get there. 1, 2, and we are, boom, at Travertine Hike. So as you can see, there is a canyon here. I'll show you where we just came from before we go in to kind of explore that cave. So this is the Colorado River way down here where we just came from. And we're going to circle over and go and explore into Travertine Canyon. So I don't need my paddle now. I'm doing some hiking. So this is kind of the inside of that area that we just popped out at. It looks like it's a slot canyon where it looked like a cave before. We just came from down in that area. We can continue to look around and see a waterfall deep in there. We're going to pop in and check that waterfall out. Yeah, so this is the waterfall that is creating this whole area called Travertine Canyon. This is Travertine Creek. And you can see with this how slot canyons are formed. I told you slot canyons were formed by wind and water. In this case, it's definitely a lot of water. So this water is coming down this waterfall, and then over time, it continues to run on the ground just like this, and it can go through that canyon right there, cutting holes in the walls of the canyon. So if we were to somehow freeze ourselves and then come back in a million years, then this whole area would be even deeper because of this water consistently eroding the sides of these canyons. Really neat stuff. As you can see, it's pretty deep. So this is the slot canyons at work. There's the direction the waterfall is in, and you can see it eroding here. You can see how the rocks at the bottom are smooth, the ground is smoother, and it's just cutting away at everything to get all the way into the Grand Canyon. All right, so we're gonna paddle to mile 233, and then we're gonna have one more spot to get to that I wanna talk about. So get your paddles ready, and we're gonna go ahead and start paddling. So give me 1 paddle, give me 2 paddles. And we are at Spaghetti Canyon. So there's the river down there, that's the Colorado. We're looking around, let's take a good look at Spaghetti Canyon here. Kind of a fun name. makes me hungry. I really like spaghetti. Maybe I'll have that for dinner tonight. So this is Spaghetti Canyon. And we got one more paddle, as you can see, to mile 277. So this will be our last paddle. So everybody give me some good effort. We got to get from 233 to 277. So give me some good paddles. 1, 2. And we are at mile 277. This is the Grand Wash. As you can see here, going down the Colorado, the canyon looks a little less deep. It gets really, really wide. It means it's the end of the Grand Canyon. So all of that water that we just paddled from mile 0 all the way to mile 277 created the Grand Canyon and is consistently eroding all of that. It gets to here, the water gets a lot smoother. As you can see, there's no real rapids anywhere. It's fairly flat. It gets pretty wide. And that is the end of the Grand Canyon. So not as many cliffs or anything like that. So that was our trip. I hope you really enjoyed our paddling trip down the Grand Canyon. Now that you've kind of seen it from the bottom, let me pop back up to the top of it real quick so you can kind of see what it looks like there again. This is our first view of Navajo Point. There's the Colorado way down in there. So sometimes it's easy to forget just how big of a place that this area is. You can see the Colorado right there. It swings down past this rock and even right there. I hope y'all enjoyed it. I was wondering if y'all had any questions that I could answer before I turn it back over to Jordan. Why is the water so brown at the end? That's a great question. So what happens as this water continues to move down the river, it picks up sediments. And because the river gets wider, the rock is less solid. So it becomes more like sandy and muddy. So when that water is moving past the sand and the mud, it picks up little bits of sand and mud, so it makes it look dirtier. It looks really, really dirty. It's interesting if you get a clear glass and you dip it into the water. If you just look at it right there, it's not nearly as dirty as it looks when it's in the river because of the way that the settlement works with the light in the river. So it definitely looks brown. It's the same amount of cleanliness though. You wouldn't want to drink the river at any point, but if you wanted to purify the water with like a water purifier, it doesn't matter. Looks like I have another question. Why is the Grand Canyon so dry? So we're talking about the areas outside of the canyon, not necessarily the Colorado River here, right? So all this area on the outside is definitely dry. So the reason being is that in northern Arizona, where the Grand Canyon is, it's a very hot and desert climate. So you have this giant river that's the Colorado, and it's cutting through all of the sandstone of this desert area. So it would definitely look like it's dry. So that's just the reason that the climate is there. You don't see a lot of trees because it's so hot, things like that. That's one of the reasons why it's so dry. And yeah, you definitely wouldn't want to drink the water unless you purify it. What other questions do y'all have? How long do I think it took to make the Grand Canyon? Billions of years. Like we saw in that one spot where it showed the baseline, that was some of the oldest rock in the Grand Canyon at 1.3 billion years old. So the rock had to form first. Then after the rock formed, then the water had to start eroding. So the water of the Colorado River has been eroding that sandstone and that baseline to create this deep, deep canyon for billions of years, for like really, really, really long time. Looks like we have another question from Lucas. How long to walk from the top of the canyon to the riverside? So there's a spot actually called Phantom Ranch that is near the river that you can actually go to. And there's a little area called Grand Canyon Village, and you can hike from Grand Canyon Village down a trail called the Bright Angel Trail to Phantom Ranch. It's a really long hike. It takes a full day to get down to the river. When most people do it, what they'll do is they'll hike from the top of the Grand Canyon down to Phantom Ranch, spend the night there, and then come out. So not a lot of people go from the top down in one day. Doesn't really happen a lot that way. It takes normally a full day just to get down to the bottom of the canyon and back. Will it be slow if you paddle the last bit of the river? Yeah, the river is moving a little bit slower, so it would definitely be slower to paddle there. Have another question. On average, how many people visit the Grand Canyon on a yearly basis? Man, that's a good question. I'm actually going to turn that over to Jordan real quick so he can maybe look that up while I'm answering. If anybody has one more question, so he's going to look that up. We'll take one last question from someone. And then if we don't have any more questions, then maybe once Jordan has that answer. Okay, last question is from Lucas. Are there any animals there? So there are some animals in the Grand Canyon. Like we kind of talked about, it's really dry though. So you don't get to see as many of these like big mammals that you kind of think of. So you'll see lots of lizards and some like snakes and stuff like that live there. You will see some like deer type stuff, some like bighorn sheep, that type thing will live in the desert and live in the Grand Canyon. But mostly what you're going to see as far as animals is the like birds and like lizards, reptiles, things like that. That's a great question, Lucas. And to answer, if you guys didn't see the chat, about 5.9 million people visit the Grand Canyon every year. It's a really popular spot. If you are living in Fullerton, it's about a 7-hour drive to get to. So you can get it done in like a 3 or 4 day weekend. Labor Day's coming up. They are open right now. So bug your parents and tell them to take you to the Grand Canyon. With that, before I get anyone into any more trouble, I'm going to hand this back over to Jordan. I hope you all enjoyed the trip. I know I did. Anytime I can jump in the river, I always like it. Last week we did Yosemite. That should be posted if you missed it. This week was Grand Canyon. Thank you again. And then next week, be sure to sign up because we're going to do Joshua Tree National Park. That's even closer. It's about 2 hours from here. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it back over to Jordan. I hope everyone enjoyed the time.
Awesome. Everybody go and give Michael a round of applause. Maybe throw up a little reaction. Awesome. I hope that you all learned a lot. I hope that you saw a lot of cool things today during our trip. Like Michael said, definitely come back next week when we'll be touring Joshua Tree. Aside from that, I hope to see you all soon. Have a good day, everybody.